There are few things in all creation that cause the infernal hosts to tremble. Power does not frighten them, they know power. Knowledge does not unsettle them, they were born with knowledge ancient and cold. But there are certain kinds of Christians, 5, perhaps, who make hell itself uneasy. There is a vast difference between the Christian who believes and the one who merely professes belief. The difference is not measured in attendance, vocabulary, or outward ritual, but in the quiet architecture of the heart. Many can repeat the creed, few can rest in it. The mouth may declare that God is good, yet the soul may still live as though he were indifferent or far away. The true believer is not one who has memorized divine words, but one who has been reshaped by them, even against the grain of his own nature. To believe is not to close one's eyes and wish something into truth. It is to open them, wide and unflinching, to a reality greater than reason can contain. It is the courage to stand upon a promise when every visible circumstance denies it. Faith, in its purest form, is not blind. It sees a farther horizon than sight allows. When storms rise, when prayers return unanswered, when every comfort is stripped away, the professing Christian begins to ask if God still cares. The true believer, though trembling, answers, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Such faith is terrible to the powers of darkness, because it cannot be purchased, persuaded, or broken. Hell deals in bargains, lust for gain, fear for safety, pride for recognition. But the believing soul has already surrendered all claims to self. The enemy cannot tempt what has nothing left to lose, for the one who truly believes has placed every treasure, every affection, every hope within the keeping of God. They have burned the bridges behind them. They have decided that even if heaven were empty, they would still choose righteousness because it is right, not because it is rewarded. The profession of faith is often loud, full of noise and enthusiasm, but the faith that moves mountains is usually quiet. It speaks not in slogans, but in steadfastness. It refuses to panic when the sky falls. It does not require applause to remain convinced. Such belief is not a posture for public display, but a steady gaze upon the face of God when no one else is watching. There is a hidden strength in believing without spectacle. The true believer can walk through the marketplace without the need to announce holiness, can face loss without the need to curse fate, can endure obscurity without resentment. Theirs is a faith that does not depend upon the temperature of the crowd or the mood of the age. While the world shifts its guards with every generation, this soul remains anchored. Every demon knows that to shake such a believer is to contend with the very heartbeat of heaven. They fear not the believer's intellect, nor his eloquence, but his certainty, that unyielding conviction that God is who he says he is, and that nothing, not even the silence of God, can make it otherwise. There is a peculiar strength in the prayer that seeks no audience. The world applauds the public act, the visible gesture, the loud profession of devotion. Yet heaven bends closer to the one who shuts the door, kneels upon the cold floor, and whispers to a God unseen. True prayer has little to do with posture, and nothing to do with spectacle. It is the soul's secret commerce with its Maker, a conversation carried on in the language of love rather than performance. Many speak of prayer as though it were a duty, a small tax paid to preserve divine favor. But prayer is not the coin we drop into a celestial machine hoping for blessings in return. It is the oxygen of the Christian life, the quiet inhaling of grace and the exhaling of trust. The one who prays when no one is watching has learned that prayer's true reward is not the granting of requests, but the reshaping of the soul in the presence of God. To pray in secret is to allow the heart to be examined, purified, and repaired away from human applause or correction. Hell dreads such prayer precisely because it cannot be imitated. The hypocrite may copy the gestures of worship, but he cannot counterfeit the intimacy of solitude with God. The devil knows well that a soul who kneels alone grows dangerous, for it becomes inhabited by a strength not its own. The demons can disturb public gatherings, distract sermons, and corrupt institutions. But the solitary prayer is beyond their reach. It takes place in a realm where heaven listens and hell is deaf. Public religion has its place, yet it is often there that pride creeps in, unseen and unchallenged. The applause of others can disguise the emptiness of the heart, and the language of devotion can become a stage script rather than a living confession. But when the door is closed and no human ear remains, the self stands bare before God. There is no reputation to protect, no audience to impress, no doctrine to defend, only the frail, trembling soul speaking to its Creator. Such naked honesty is unbearable to the forces of darkness, because it rebuilds the human will in the likeness of divine humility. The one who prays in secret does not measure success by emotion or outcome. Some prayers end in silence, yet even the silence becomes holy. It is in that stillness that faith matures, for the believer learns to trust the unseen listener rather than the echo of his own voice. In that hidden place, pride dissolves, fear shrinks, and desires are sifted, until only what is eternal remains. The heart that persists there grows luminous, though no one may notice. Its light spills quietly into every word, every act, every ordinary moment, until the very air around such a person seems charged with peace unseen but deeply felt. Suffering is the crucible in which all pretense is burned away. It reveals the truth of what we are and what we believe. There is nothing so honest as pain, for it strips away our borrowed words and second-hand convictions, leaving only the raw cry of the soul. The Christian who suffers well is not the one who avoids pain, nor the one who pretends it does not hurt, but the one who discovers that even anguish can be transfigured into worship. To suffer well is a grace rarely sought, but deeply envied by the hosts of darkness. For pain is the oldest weapon of hell, and yet, in the hands of the faithful, it becomes heaven's own tool. The enemy's design is simple: to make man curse the goodness of God when goodness seems to vanish. His ancient strategy has always been to whisper, if God loved you, he would not have allowed this. But the soul that has walked through fire and still calls God good speaks a language that no demon can endure. The Christian who suffers well has learned that faith does not die in the dark. It is born there. When the light of comfort is extinguished, belief ceases to be a theory and becomes a lifeline. It is easy to sing when the sun is warm and the table is full. It is another thing entirely to bless the name of God from the ashes. Yet it is precisely in that quiet defiance, that stubborn praise, that the powers of evil are undone. For the believer who can say, even so, I will trust, has already won the victory that no circumstance can overturn. Suffering well does not mean suppressing tears or silencing grief. The Scriptures themselves are filled with laments, and even the Son of God wept. To suffer well is to bring one's sorrow into the presence of God rather than away from it. It is to allow pain to become prayer, not bitterness. It is to cry out honestly, even angrily, but still toward heaven. The demons do not fear stoicism, they fear the trembling saint who bleeds and prays in the same breath. There is a strange alchemy in suffering. It turns vanity into vision, self-reliance into surrender, and shallow joy into unshakable peace. The one who suffers well does not emerge unscarred, but the scars themselves become evidence of grace. The fire that should have consumed instead refines. What once seemed punishment reveals itself as pruning, and what felt like abandonment becomes the very proof of divine nearness. For when every earthly comfort is stripped away, the soul learns that God alone is enough. Pain has a way of teaching what pleasure cannot. Ease whispers that we are self-sufficient. Loss reminds us that we are held by hands not our own. The Christian who suffers well carries within them a wisdom that no book can teach, for they have met God not in theory but in the wilderness. Such a believer becomes a living contradiction, wounded yet radiant, weary yet unwavering, sorrowful yet unshaken. They speak not of what they have read, but of what they have survived. Hell cannot comprehend such endurance. Its logic is transactional, obedience for blessing, faith for reward. But the Christian who praises through tears breaks that logic entirely. Their devotion is no longer conditional, it is covenantal. It persists without promise of relief, without visible evidence of rescue. It is this kind of faith that once turned prisons into sanctuaries, chains into testimonies, and martyrdom into music. Suffering, when carried in the arms of faith, becomes an altar where the soul learns to worship not because of what God gives, but because of who He is. It is a mystery that heaven treasures and hell cannot imitate. The transformation of pain into praise, of weakness into witness, of despair into a deeper kind of devotion. Forgiveness is the most scandalous demand of the gospel. It offends both our pride and our pain. We can admire the courage of martyrs or the wisdom of saints, but forgiveness cuts against something far deeper, the human instinct for justice, for repayment, for the balancing of the scales. Yet it is this very act, the release of the debt owed, that most clearly reveals the character of heaven. To forgive what seems unforgivable is to act in a way utterly foreign to the economy of this world, and utterly terrifying to the powers of darkness. The devil understands cruelty, ambition, and vengeance. These are his instruments, his art. But forgiveness is a note he cannot play. It is the one sound that shatters the rhythm of hell's music. For every act of genuine forgiveness is an echo of the cross, a reenactment of that divine paradox where perfect holiness and perfect mercy met in one crimson hour. When a Christian forgives, even through trembling lips and wounded memory, hell is reminded of its defeat. The Christian who forgives what seems unforgivable does not do so from a place of naive softness. Forgiveness is not denial of evil, it is defiance of it. It is not the absence of justice, but the surrender of vengeance into the hands of a just God. The one who forgives does not pretend that the wrong never happened. Rather, they refuse to let the wrong become their master. To forgive is not to erase memory, but to release its poison. It is to choose freedom over bondage, healing over hatred, life over bitterness. Such forgiveness is never easy. It tears the heart before it heals it. The wound demands attention, and the mind rehearses its pain as though it might one day make sense of it. Yet the Christian who forgives well has come to understand that clinging to resentment is to drink salt water. It promises relief, but only deepens the thirst. They choose instead to let mercy do its slow, divine work. They discover, often with trembling surprise, that in forgiving another, they themselves are set free. Hell trembles at this because forgiveness unravels its oldest strategy. The enemy binds humanity with the chains of remembered injury. He delights in division, in old wounds reopened, in communities fractured by pride disguised as principle. But the moment one believer dares to forgive, those chains begin to break. The devil traffics in accusation, and forgiveness silences him. He cannot accuse where grace has already spoken. The Christian who forgives what seems unforgivable reflects a power that does not originate from human will. It is the supernatural life of Christ, manifest in mortal flesh. The act of forgiveness is nothing less than a miracle of transferred strength, The grace that once descended upon Calvary, descending again into the heart of the believer. It is not natural to forgive the betrayer, the abuser, the slanderer, or the destroyer. It is divine. That is why it terrifies hell and confounds the world. To forgive is not to make peace with injustice. It is to entrust justice to God. The one who forgives learns to step back from the courtroom of self and let the judge of all the earth decide rightly. Such faith disarms evil because it withdraws from its game entirely. Revenge feeds darkness. Forgiveness starves it. Every act of mercy deprives the enemy of nourishment, for he lives on the bitterness of the human heart. The Christian who forgives the unforgivable walks through the world as a living contradiction, wounded yet whole, wronged yet radiant. They do not speak of peace as theory but as testimony, for they have laid their pain upon the altar of divine love and watched as it was consumed not by anger but by light. There are few virtues more misunderstood than humility. The world imagines it as weakness, as timidity dressed in pious clothing, as the quiet surrender of those too fearful to strive. Yet true humility has never been the absence of strength. It is the disciplined control of it. It is not self-hatred but self-forgetfulness. The Christian who walks humbly with God is not the one who thinks less of himself, but the one who thinks of himself less. His gaze is lifted from the mirror of self-concern and fixed upon the light of divine purpose. To walk humbly with God is to move in step with a rhythm that the world cannot hear. It is a pace measured not by achievement, fame, or applause, but by obedience. Such a person may live unnoticed by history, yet heaven knows their name. They build no monuments, yet their prayers hold up the pillars of the world. The humble Christian's strength lies not in public influence, but in quiet alignment with the will of God. For humility is nothing more than truth lived out, truth about who God is and who we are not. The enemy fears the humble more than the proud. Pride, after all, is predictable. It can be provoked, deceived, or flattered. Pride is a door the devil knows how to open. But humility is a fortress with no handle on the outside. The proud soul burns to defend its reputation. The humble one has no reputation left to defend. The proud seek control. The humble have already surrendered it. The proud cling to their own wisdom. The humble walk in a wisdom not their own. The devil cannot tempt what no longer belongs to itself. There is a peculiar power in hiddenness. The Christian who walks humbly with God does not need to be seen to be significant. They understand that the kingdom of heaven is built not by those who shout the loudest, but by those who love the deepest. The unseen kindness, the unrecorded sacrifice, the prayer whispered for another, all these are the quiet currencies of eternity. In a world obsessed with visibility, the humble are invisible by choice. They have discovered the sacred joy of doing good without needing to be known for it. Humility is not passive. It is an active resistance against the tyranny of self. The humble Christian fights daily to dethrone the ego, to silence the endless craving for recognition, to refuse the flattery that corrupts as surely as poison. They are content to let God measure their worth. They serve faithfully in the small and hidden places, because they know that greatness in the kingdom has never been about being seen, but about being faithful. Their footsteps may leave no mark upon the earth, yet they echo in eternity. Such humility has a strange radiance, for it allows the divine to shine through unimpeded. Pride clouds the soul with the smoke of self-importance, but humility clears the air, making space for the light of God to fill it. The humble person becomes like a window, transparent, unobstructed, and luminous. You cannot look at them without catching a glimpse of something beyond them. That is why the enemy dreads humility. It makes a person invisible to self and visible to heaven. To walk humbly with God is to walk with awareness of dependence. Every breath, every success, every answered prayer is received, not achieved. The humble do not boast of faith as a possession. They hold it as a gift. They know that grace is never earned, only accepted. Such awareness frees them from anxiety, for they have ceased to believe that the world rests upon their shoulders. Their peace is not born of ignorance, but of trust. They have placed their confidence not in their own strength, but in the one whose strength never fails. There is also courage in humility. It takes immense bravery to be small in a culture that worships greatness. The humble are not cowards hiding from ambition. They are warriors who have laid ambition at the feet of God. Their surrender is not retreat, but victory, the victory of light over pride, of peace over striving, of eternal purpose over temporary applause. While others rush to climb the ladders of recognition, the humble kneel, and in kneeling they rise higher than they knew possible. The Christian who walks humbly with God often appears ordinary, even forgettable, but when they pray, the heavens listen. When they act, the ripple spreads farther than sight can follow. They move quietly through the world, unseen but unstoppable, carrying within them a power that does not shout, does not boast, and yet alters everything it touches. We live in an age of volume, an age where conviction is often confused with loudness and truth, mistaken for the boldness of tone rather than the purity of substance. The world teaches that to overcome darkness one must shout it down, drown it in argument, overwhelm it with spectacle. Yet the Christian who understands the deeper nature of light knows that it never conquers by commotion. Darkness is not expelled by thunder, but by the calm insistence of a single flame that refuses to die. The soul that burns quietly in faith holds more power than 1,000 voices crying in outrage, for the devil delights in noise. He builds his kingdom on distraction, on the ceaseless hum of fear, debate, and self-assertion. He is a creature of confusion and clamor. But light, in its truest form, does not argue with the dark. It simply shines. It neither boasts nor panics. It stands steady in stillness, and the darkness, confused by its calm, begins to recede. The Christian who carries such a light does not need the stage, the crowd, or the banner. Their holiness is not a performance but a presence. There is something disarming in their serenity, for peace is a weapon the enemy cannot counterfeit. They move through a world of turmoil as one who has already heard another voice, deeper than the noise around them, and obeyed it. They do not shout to prove that they believe. They live as though belief were oxygen. Darkness is not afraid of words. It has heard plenty of them. What it fears is consistency. It fears the steady, faithful heart that continues to love, to forgive, to serve, when no one applauds and no one notices. The quiet light of integrity, once kindled, cannot be reasoned away. Even the smallest candle, if it burns long enough, teaches the darkness something about endurance. The devil can mimic eloquence, but he cannot imitate persistence born of love. The light that truly dispels darkness begins inwardly. It is not the product of moral posturing or religious display. It comes from the hidden chamber of the soul where God dwells unseen. The Christian who tends that inner flame knows that holiness is not a garment worn in public, but a fire nurtured in solitude. They understand that the strength of light lies not in its volume, but in its purity. Contaminated light blinds, pure light reveals. That is why the saints of every age have been marked more by gentleness than by grandeur, more by patience than by noise. The quiet flame does not fear the night. It accepts that darkness will always gather, always threaten, always whisper that it is stronger. Yet it knows something the darkness does not, that its very existence depends upon the absence of light. The moment light appears even faintly, darkness begins to lose ground. The Christian who burns quietly knows this truth and therefore need not panic at the growing shadows of the age. They are not called to chase the darkness, only to remain lit. There is a humility in such endurance. The one who burns quietly does not measure success by the number of eyes that see, nor by the noise that follows their actions. Their power lies in faithfulness, not fame. They do not need to announce their goodness. They simply let it glow through the cracks of their ordinary life. The warmth of their presence is felt long before their words are heard. In a cold world, that warmth becomes its own testimony. The enemy fears such light because it cannot be extinguished by ridicule, threat, or fatigue. It feeds on something beyond the reach of circumstance, grace itself. It grows in the dark, it strengthens under pressure, it spreads without sound. The devil can silence preachers, close churches, and sow confusion among the proud. But he cannot touch the soul that burns with secret love for God. The history of faith is written not by those who shouted loudest, but by those who endured longest. There is also a profound gentleness in the way true light moves. It exposes without humiliating, reveals without wounding, warms even as it unveils. The Christian who burns quietly does not condemn the dark. They illuminate it. Their life becomes a map for others lost in confusion, a subtle radiance that guides without commanding. They speak little of holiness, but make it visible in patience, mercy, and restraint. They do not fight darkness with its own weapons. They overcome it by simply being what it cannot comprehend pure. The world in its weariness does not need more noise. It needs present souls who burn with compassion steady enough to light the path for others. Such people rarely know the measure of their influence. A word spoken in peace may soften a heart a continent away. A prayer whispered in faith may alter a destiny no eye will see. The light that burns quietly does not broadcast its victories. It simply keeps burning, and by its endurance, entire rooms, entire hearts, entire histories are changed. This is the kind of light that once dwelt in the carpenter from Nazareth, quiet, constant, utterly unafraid of the dark. It still finds its home in those who choose silence over pride, patience over fury, mercy over scorn. The darkness may rage, it may roar, it may fill the air with its threats, but the quiet flame does not tremble. It knows that noise fades, shadows shift, but light endures. Evil does not tremble before mere religion, nor do demons flee from the sound of ceremony. What they fear are souls aflame, those who believe when belief costs something, who pray when silence answers back, who suffer and still bless the name of God, who forgive what shatters the heart, who walk humbly without seeking the world's gaze, and who burn quietly with the steady light of heaven. Such Christians are not always seen, but the unseen realms know their names. They are heaven's quiet warriors, carrying eternity within earthen vessels. Their lives preach sermons louder than words, their prayers shake foundations no eye can see, and their love, patient, fierce, and enduring, undoes the schemes of hell itself. For in every age, when darkness rises and the world grows cold, God does not send armies or angels in thunder. He sends such souls, small, steady, luminous, and wherever they stand, no matter how shadowed the hour, the light holds.